Listen to me. If there was a wise man who would ever think of this, they would say in order to be superior to the man, you've got to be the man. For I am the man himself.
Alright guys, we are back, and what is going on? This is the Club of the Man 1993, and of course I am back. I uploaded a couple Wolfenstein commercials the other day, well, for a couple days while I was away, but yeah, this is my first video back home, as I was away for about a weekend, and basically a 4-day weekend or whatnot, away on another business trip, but I am home. And while I was gone, I did watch the next WWE 24 special, as it was one that I was looking forward to. Because I'd never seen the one on Keith Lee, as he definitely is one of my personal favorites, that unfortunately has not gotten a chance to live his full peak, I feel like, in wrestling. And I don't know if he ever will, because of where he is now in AEW, and how he's been booked, and his health. I'm not too sure. So, because of, like, you know, I have, like, I don't want to say an emotional connection, but he is somebody that I think he's awesome, but I feel like he hasn't been able to really show how awesome he is. Outside, of course, of his run in NXT from 2019 to 2020. Those were definitely the best years of Keith Lee I've seen, in my opinion. And when I watched this documentary, I thought I would really get a little more of a more emotional side from his past. Can I be a little bit honest? I didn't hate this documentary, but I feel like they didn't dig as deep into his story as I thought they would. Like, they mentioned, you know, he lived in a rough area. But they didn't go into much details of how. They mentioned, of course, how he was living in cars for a little bit when he first started wrestling. Which, okay, yes, I get that. And especially since his father didn't really approve him doing a wrestling career. He really wanted him to continue on in the football. But, of course, what led him to want to go into wrestling instead, we'll talk about that in a second. And other than, of course, the fact that, yes, you know, he did get rejected multiple times in WWE tryouts. I'm not saying that he didn't have a rough past. No, I do see he had a journey. But I just wish this documentary would have gotten a little bit more into that, if I'm being honest. Like, it was one that was like 50 minutes long. It could have been 60 minutes long. It could have had just like a couple more minutes of touching a little bit more on a couple of subjects, if I'm being honest. But it is what it is. We still got to, you know, watch this. Well, I did. Again, I'm very surprised with how much of a Keith Lee fan I am that I've never seen this one until just a few days ago. But we are going to talk about it, and we're going to continue on this series. This is number 30. This is the 30th episode in this review series. We don't have too many left involving individuals. I think it's just Big E, The Miz, Night 1, Night 2, WrestleMania 37, Rumble 2020. Yeah, we only have 2 more left, like individual ones left after this. Both of them I have not seen. But let's talk about Mr. Bask in his glory, the limitless one, Keith Lee. So this documentary goes basically up until he got called up to the main roster in 2020. It starts off telling his story about how he grew up in Wichita Falls, Texas. His grandmother was the one that got him really into wrestling. And when she died, he took it really hard. I think Keith was only 12 years old when she died. And then his parents got divorced. But being in the hood, as he called it, and just, losing his grandmother was definitely a very hard time for him. And basically, there was a mutual agreement that being where he was not the best for him at 12 years old. So that's when he moved away to Dallas to live with his father, which basically spent the rest of his teenage years into college there. And of course, that's where he got into football. And he was actually, I didn't know this. Of course, when he was in football, he was known as the Bus because he wore number 36, and basically people looked at him like Jerome Bettis, former Pittsburgh Steelers running back, of course. There was high hopes for him to go into football, especially his father. But then that emotional side of him just felt him tugging towards wrestling. He wanted to do it for his grandmother and make her proud. Unfortunately, though, his father wasn't totally on board with him doing this. But he still dropped out of college after his freshman year, and he would go on to train to be a wrestler. Of course, though, what he didn't tell, though, was how much money he was really making. Being in the indies, especially, so the biggest thing I got out of Keith Lee, and I think what took WWE the longest to finally sign him, was he wasn't really, it didn't feel like he was branching out of his comfort zone. He was sticking around one area doing indies and whatnot. They wanted to see him do more, branch out more, and also just be him. So I think that's one thing. I think that's the main thing I came across from what I heard from Regal and other superstars as well who were in this documentary. Like we saw Eric and Ivar, we saw Adam Cole in there as well, a few others too. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing about Keith was that he it took him a while to branch out of his comfort zone a little bit, but he wasn't making that much money on the indies. His trainer, Killer Brooks, whichever his name is, there were nights where Keith Lee was sleeping in his house and Brooks didn't know it. There was nights he was sleeping in his car, and of course nobody knew it. He wasn't making a lot of money. He had to buy gear and all this other stuff. It was a tough time. And of course, his father didn't know about it. And when he found out that it was basically the case, it did make his case even more better. I believe his first WWE tryout was in 2008 or 2009. He didn't, of course, get it, but he was hired one night as an extra, I think during a segment with Randy Orton and the McMahons. And Keith Lee, ironically enough, of course, it comes full circle at the very end of this documentary, was one of the security guards preventing the McMahons from getting to Randy Orton, which was crazy. Of course, even though during one of his tryouts he got rejected by the WWE, one of them was where Dusty Rhodes basically said anything about being him and just bask in your glory or something like that. And that, of course, is what made him come with the catchphrase, bask in my glory. Or bask in his glory, pretty much. And just be you. I mean, I know he also had some issues with his promos or whatnot that he did address in his Talk is Jericho interview when he left WWE and went to AEW in 2021, 2022, whenever it was. So that was another factor there as well. But then, of course, I think it was even the first two times after he got rejected, he basically just went out there and just, there's times he had self-doubt, but he went out there and proved that, hey, you're making a big mistake here on this. And it took him a while, but then he was finally, I think the one match that he said that really, put him on the radar was, I think it was in Beyond Wrestling, I think it was the match happened, or I can't remember what exactly the promotion was, where he wrestled who we know today as, well, at the time, he was Donovan Dijak, or of course, as we knew him at WWE, as Dominic Dijakovic, or T-Bar, and then Dijak before he got released last year. And that was the match that really put Keith Lee on the map. That first match he had with him in Beyond Wrestling. And again, he started to branch out more, go to more places. And then it was, I believe, 2018. The first time he was seen in NXT was he was in the crowd at TakeOver Chicago 2. But during that time, he was given two opportunities. He could have gone to Japan, or he could have gone to WWE. Because that's where WWE officially wanted him. They, of course, been keeping an eye on him, but they basically kept saying is, better, but we want more from you. And obviously, he made the decision to go to WWE. He made his debut in early August of 2018. I think he wrestled, well, at the time he was Marcel Barthel, but was known today as Ludwig Kaiser. I think that was his debut as well in NXT. I can't remember for sure, but that's the first time I remember seeing him was when he fought Keith Lee. And at first, also, I really like Keith Lee's first theme music when he came in, before he got the "Oh, bask in his glory." And then, they told a story for the first year with how stacked NXT was with the Tommaso Ciampas, the Johnny Garganos, the Aleister Blacks, the Ricochets, all the other talent they had at the time. It did kind of feel like at first he didn't have a spot, but they just kept saying, wait patiently. Wait patiently. And I agree. It took a little bit for them to really get Keith Lee going. But once they took the handcuffs off him, there was no turning back for him. 2019 by far was his breakout year. I still remember the match where one, it felt like they were finally going all in with Keith Lee. And then two, they made me a fan of a certain someone I mentioned before, was the first match he had in NXT with Dijakovic. I believe that was at the end of February, early March. I still remember, it had to end of February, because I remember that was when I was visiting my sister when she lived down in Corpus, and I'd watched an episode of NXT, and that first Haas fight they had that went to a double count out or something like that, that was the match I became even more of a fan of Keith Lee's, because as I said, I knew the hype was there for him, but I hadn't seen him get the cuffs taken off of him. And then Dominic Dijakovic, didn't care for him at first, then I cared for him after that match. That's a match that really fueled the fire. And he would go on to get even better, have more matches down the line against Dijakovic. I know he got hurt for a little bit, Dijakovic, but then he came back. And then it was towards the end of 2019 when things really picked up for Keith Lee. Survivor Series that year, well, first off, he was in War Games against the Undisputed Era. He teamed with Matt Riddle, Tommaso Ciampa, and a surprise number 4 entrant of Kevin Owens. And then he was in the men's 5-on-5-on-5 Survivor Series elimination match. And he had that, and he mentioned in his Talk is Jericho interview that he thinks that, he still believes that Tommaso Ciampa should have gotten that spot, since he was the biggest NXT star on that roster for NXT, for that team. But he does kind of think that it was just because he was the big guy. But even if that was the case, he still took full advantage of that moment. When it came down to him, Roman Reigns, and Seth Rollins, and he eliminated Seth Rollins, the crowd exploded. And that not only made Keith Lee a bigger star, that really set in motion more with the story of Survivor Series that year, going into Seth Rollins' heel turn right after that as well. Because the babyface momentum on Seth had died at that point. So they had no choice but to turn him heel. And I think they did a great job transitioning him into that heel role in 28 at the end of 2018. And of course, came down to him and Roman Reigns. I still wish he would have overcame Roman. He didn't, but he got the fist bump afterwards. And Keith got even made to an even bigger star. So much so that end of 2019, beginning of 2020, he won the North American Championship. And a week and a half later, he was a surprise entrant in the Royal Rumble, going toe-to-toe with Brock Lesnar. Which I always love when he made his entrance, besides the big pop from the crowd. And of course, it was at Minute Maid Park in Houston, Texas. And Brock was in the ring by himself. And again, Brock was just like in his like loose, having a fun night mood that night. And the moment Keith came out and Brock was over the ring, he just goes, "Whoa, big boy!" I still crack up every time I see that moment. It was hilarious. But him going toe to toe with Brock as the mid-card NXT champion. The North American title is the mid-card championship for NXT. He really not just elevated that title. He really elevated himself with that brief, like, couple minutes he had with Brock Lesnar. My gosh, dude, I wish we would have gotten that match. That would have been an outstanding match. But then, of course, we're probably never going to get it because Keith Lee's still in AEW. Brock's future is still way up in the air. I don't know what the heck's going on with that lawsuit anymore. I have no idea if Brock is ever coming back or not. I keep hearing the case is closed. I hear that it was only certain things were closed on the case. So I have no idea what's really going on with that whole thing. But as of right now, my mind is set. We're going to get Keith Lee versus Brock Lesnar. But that tease, man, it was just so amazing, that tease. What was also special about that night, Keith had mentioned that was the night that, you know, his father he knew that his father was really proud of him from that moment he had in the Rumble. Because again, like I said, he didn't really approve of Keith going forward with wrestling. He wanted him to stick with football, but that was that moment where he got the nod and the pat in the back from his father, which of course is excellent to hear. They did jump into when Keith won the NXT title in that champion versus champion title for title match against Adam Cole at the Great American Bash that summer. And of course we know the story, he would relinquish the NXT North American Championship. And then he would then a month later, which I still think sucks that he only held the NXT title for like a month. He should have had a reign with that title. But he held it for a month, dropped it to Karrion Kross at TakeOver 30, and then got called up to the main roster. Now, despite the fact that I still hated that they changed his theme song, they butchered it big time on his Raw debut, which also, by the way, when Keith got told he's been called up, he thought, okay, maybe he'll get like a brief little break, but nope. Immediately to the Raw after SummerSlam that weekend, he got called up. And his first feud was with Randy Orton. And, you know, there's not a lot of people who do get to make their main roster debut against Randy Orton. And yes, his first match, other than the payback match he had with Randy, where he beat Randy clean, don't forget about that. He beat Randy Orton clean in his first main roster pay-per-view match. But on Raw that week, they had him fight Randy, and he fought him several times during that first month or two of his main roster run. And every one of them had run-ins with Drew McIntyre. Which, of course, you know, that wasn't like, he wasn't losing, but he also wasn't winning either. So it kind of like staggered him, made him stuck a little bit. And that's really, though, like, as far as it got, just, you know, highlighting his journey. They did have moments in there, here and there, where they did talk about him and Mia Yim, who are now married in real life. Of course, they didn't really dig too deep into it, but, you know, she was, you know, in there as a supporting, you know, interview as well. I forgot to mention that as well. But that's basically as far as they went. We all know that, you know, his run on the main roster, we all know that he went to, his best match on the main roster was definitely the match he had at the beginning of 2021 when he got to wrestle McIntyre in 25 minutes for the world title, which was a fantastic match, by the way. Then health issues came around. He was originally supposed to win the United States Championship at Elimination Chamber in that triple threat with him and Matt Riddle and Bobby Lashley. But then that's when he first got sick, and then the after effects of his illness is what really led to his health issues. And then he came back, and they were trying to transition him into the Bearcat gimmick and whatnot, and then he got released, and we all know the story from there. But yeah, like I said, I do think that this guy is something special. Like, I really hope that once he is healthy for sure, that he does get to go back to WWE, because I don't think it's going to work for him in AEW. I just don't think, with Tony's inconsistent booking and, who he's putting on TV, I don't see him making an effort to give him a spot to shine. I would love to see him go back to WWE right now. I really think that with Triple H in charge, that's where I think he would really take advantage and really make Keith Lee the star that he was just starting to become before he got called up from NXT. So, like I said, overall, it was a good documentary. I just wish they would have gone a little bit deeper in some things that they talked about. Like, again, especially, like what he dealt with in the hood before he moved in with his father. Maybe talk a little more about his relationship with Mia Yim. Or, I don't know, there's some stuff it's like they highlighted on, but they didn't talk too much about. But still a good documentary. I enjoyed it. Next one is on Big E. I believe leading up to WrestleMania 37, I believe it is. But we'll see, of course, how far that one goes. But that one I'm very interested to see as well, because I've never seen that one before either. And yeah, like I said, only a handful left. So this is number 30. There's 37 in total. We're getting closer to the end here, folks. So, yeah, what are your guys' thoughts on this W24 special on Keith Lee? Leave your guys' thoughts down in the comment section below. Slap a like on the video and subscribe for more content on my channel. Follow me on Twitter as well, The Club of the Man 93. And also follow me on Instagram at The Club of the Man 1993. And until then, guys, I'm checking out. I'll catch you all later and have a great rest of your night. And do not forget, in order to be superior to the man, you've got to be the man. And for I am. Oh, wait. I'm sorry, before I cut this off, I did forget to mention also, 2020 also, timeout. We're going to step back for a second. I forgot to mention this part. In 2020 also, Keith also did wear a lot of gear, inspiring people who were going through, the tough time with the pandemic, the different movements as well that was going on at the time. So he was definitely, trying to, have support for all those. He lost, I think, 9 family members during that time. And also including where he also lost his trainer, Killerton Brooks. I can't remember which one his name was. I want to look it up before I put the tags in. He lost him, and he was one of the last people to visit him at the end of June of 2020. So that was a tough too. So I forgot to mention that. So sorry about that. Now we're going to check out here, guys. Again, slap a like on the video. Subscribe for more content on my channel. Follow me on Twitter at The Club of the Man 93. Follow me on TikTok and Instagram at The Club of the Man 993. And leave your comments down in the comments section below. And continue to support the channel of the man. For I am the man himself. And that is not just a pain, my friends. That is a fact of life. Yeah! And don't forget to bask in his glory. For he is limitless.